Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Twilight Prepper again with Colin Dawson. I just wanted to come here and tell you today about the impending Confederacy. And before you say it, you can't say Civil War. You can't do this. That's illegal. That's all this. Not really. I am not endorsing any Civil War. I'm not telling people to join a Civil War or anything else. And that is just how it is. I can talk about it every day of the week and everything else and say what I do see coming. Whether you like it or not, move on or like and subscribe. This is Colin Dawson with Twilight Prepper, and it is legal for me to mention it. Now, how would this Civil War be funded or anything else? This is one of those interesting moments. And before you go on with Trump derangement syndrome, and I'm bashing Trump because this might say something about a state that he's in or anything else, he is technically the 43rd president from New York and the 45th president from Florida. He did change residency. In saying all of this with everything else, here's what you'll probably bring up with it. And also, see these little wonderful Cash App games? This is how everyone is funding everything. It's also how they brought down the USSR. I would say basically back in the archaic 1960s and 70s, you could prove openly about how the Vatican Bank was actually funding all of this. Technically, that's considered work in the state of New York with about 17 others. So anything that takes time that you're supposedly giving money for whatever it is, they have to pay it. And for some reason, someone's put in through the legislature in these states that the federal government is responsible for this. So irregardless of anything, the Fed has to keep printing money for this. Now, I will tell you how it took down the USSR because they couldn't even afford clothing. What are we going through? A massive inflation time with these basically everywhere on people's cell phones. And the only reason why I get them is I'm around all these World War IIs that go, it's how we get our real Secret Service check, Colin. It's how we get our real money that we're owed for everything we do here. It's how I get my undercover money or else my real science money from the government, since I'm really an Oak Ridge scientist. You can go on that most of the people I meet, and I agree with you because I look at some and go, you're just stupid as anything, and you just went up there and said you were a scientist there because you were in Oak Ridge for like 3 years on the police force or else sanitation or something else. It's absolutely ridiculous, but at the same time, I'm just going, They have all these, they pay all of them. A lot of the games back in the old days when they'd pop up on one of the big, huge, 500-pound video game machines, they actually pretty much all were pirated all the way from the Vatican Bank, which I'll be honest, supports so many of our widows and orphans and anyone who wants to play the jilted mother or else downtrodden. They all have personal accounts that can be tithed to directly from the Vatican Bank and are there to keep up these various different peoples. And I do get these mostly from the World War IIs, like I said. Even the Mussolini family plays them, and they get all of their stuff and have lawyers to make sure that they have dual state citizenship. You do not have to reside within a state to have dual citizenship in a state. And they have their citizenship in about 5 of them: Jersey, Maryland, New York. As soon as I say Wisconsin, it's Michigan and everything. And then one of the ones out west that's not California, it's either Oregon or Colorado, that has Cheyenne in it. And they have one cell phone, one everything, gets 5 times the amount on each one of their Cash App games that they play. And is sent directly to them. So that they can actually prove that through their system of having something in the Vatican Bank, that qualifies them, since they have basically, an existence check or something else, that they are Native Americans here and are in charge of whatever it is, the spiritual situation. I know everybody's going to scream, it's Jesus here. I could say 15 ways it's not, just like you could say 10 ways that it is. So, moving along from there, welcome to how the Confederacy is going to be funding itself. And this Confederacy basically is being ran in a lot of ways with the international banking entanglements like the USSR had with the Azores and now the Caledonian banks. Caledonian banks actually have more inflow into China and everything else. And I keep looking at it whether you go Azores, Canary Islands with the Iberian, and out there in, how do we say this? New Caledonia. You can even say the Cayman Islands a little bit here, but really our main banking problem or situation is going to be Mexico, and they don't even really deal with the former colonial powers of them for banking or anything else. It's one of the reasons why, since Europe controls that status, or else gives you the good certification, that since they won't deal with Austria, Germany, Switzerland, France, Spain, Portugal to some extent, Italy to some extent, and so with England. They have one of the worst banking credit scores ever. And it's also banking recommendation, like we believe your banks are safe. This is just one of the things that actually happens out there with it when basically Europe does control so much of everything still from its massive colonial days. Now, and moving on from this, I will say that yes, I have spent time with the people who get money from the Vatican Bank. Yes, I have watched them pull it up on their phones, send their money over to their account, and everything else. They send a wire over there, and it's like, don't worry, it takes about 15-20 minutes. And even I know some of the police that I can bring in, and they'll be like, I will never say that unless you have definitive proof of everything. And I know the people that did it because I can come up with all these reasons that it's like you just superimposed the Cash App game over the screen here. Until you can prove otherwise, that is complete doubt in my mind, and I will not mention it because I do believe emails take 15 minutes to go somewhere, so we all have to review them. So all that was just something of a review for a wire transfer from somewhere that wasn't the Vatican Bank. I can get state police that will come in here, 2 of them, if one of them's still alive, because she just looks really young and does high school work, even at like 60 or 70. It's absolutely ridiculous with the amount of situations that would be there, but, also they don't like me because they go, we're still winning this war for Christ. And talk about how it's just everybody realized that only Rome can colonize the place and you can't complain about it. But moving on. With all of this and everything else, all the stuff about how and where the entanglements are, here's the basic gist of it. In Spain, there was a bunch of people that had the cash apps. They got huge amounts of money. And then they moved it to the Azores. And basically you have to have about $200,000 to go into that. Well, they found out a way how to generate the money by bit conversations. Now it's by blockchain conversations, which is mostly really big in France and Portugal. With this, those countries have more influence in Asia than they do here, just like Spain has more influence south of the border and areas like the USSR, because the USSR wanted to move away from its connections back in Napoleon with France and make itself totally separate and different. The USSR had to print so much extra money, and it even went over into the ruble when Boris Yeltsin took over. I know this is really boring, but let me get here really quickly. Basically, the Spanish banks have to have, for every dollar you have there, since you're a foreign national, the equivalency in that currency to back it up. So if you come over there and withdraw it in euros, they have to have it in euros. If you come over and for any reason, have it in dollars, you have to have it in dollars. And if you put it in there, it has to be in the Spanish currency. They have to have the backup. They have to provide the euro for the backup. So they've provided two currencies out of their economy for that. You, as a USA citizen, put in it there, or the old USSR, they have to have from your government that amount in there, or else they can just stop completely any trade, traffic, or anything else that goes through there. And Spain is one of the largest shipping groups out there, as well as Portugal with internet and everything else. France has a similar situation off of steel and everything else. It's like soon the steel will just go through the roof if we do not back all of our monetary obligations in the Bank of New Caledonia. If anybody goes, that sounds familiar, it's where this Olympic surfing was just held at this summer. It's one of the last colonies of France, and it has some of the last of the trees that the dinosaurs ate. And they all go, it's really part of old Atlantis because they were so old they had dinosaurs. Anyway, this stuff is basically a really simple situation, and with it, all these dollars at large count as dollars at large in our country, but yet there's no way for us to have those dollars here for anyone to get to employ people. You hear about cash shortages, coin shortages, everything else, and the banks having to print so much that they have to be able to do that, and these have to be cash on hand. It's not like the Federal Reserve will send them the $200 million to $200 trillion that they have over there in these banks. They take them over there, put them in a giant warehouse that's got like 2 feet of steel on it, reinforced concrete on both sides, and a nice little rubber barrier so that nothing statically can get in there and fade the ink on the stuff. And it's basically sealed off so that there's, literally really sealed off so there's not any little critters that can get in there and chew it up. This is our main situational problem. The fact is that the New Caledonia banks being so entangled with France in the Pacific, and the Azores with the Spanish, and Canary Islands over there with Portugal. I know I probably got those two reversed. I'm sorry about that. Are really pulling on the strings of our situation, and the big 70s inflation was we could just print enough money and make enough new business to outdo the USSR. Who's really controlling all these is basically all these groups either saying they don't want an invasion from Rome, forced to take their Roman principality back into their country, remain totally separate from any of the World War II situations, or like the New Caledonian was, once Andorra came back in, they took all their massive amount of wealth that no one could really prove anything about with everything, and this is really good for Macron. Sometimes they sound news, his name is Macron, like in Canada. Macron did this strategically, bringing in Andorra and setting themselves up that it was over France and he was the elected king, and between the bishop there and Andorra, directly back to Rome. And politically, he said, we're just going to do our banks like how Spain does for its own strategic defense. So all of that became now something over there. And since they didn't let the USA in, they couldn't take a whole bunch of this massive wealth that was illegal wealth done with crimes against the United States since World War II, that had just been being reinvested and put in these black market situations, using Bitcoin to funnel it around the world, crash stock markets here and there, and run away with the big money hell, there's probably money from Enron, but they're like, dude, that was like a tip to us. And have put it in there and have an operative somewhere in the USA. I know this is like 3 or 4 points of connection over. And then they put all their money over into New Caledonia and said, USA, you owe us like $200 trillion before us to back this, or else we're going to figure out some way how to get it out of you, and trade deals and other stuff and high end tariffs and everything, that we have to get this as USA dollars to keep this up. It's international banking laws. Y'all signed a contract with it. We just changed something to try and like. And do we hate you more as like your Native American race, or do we hate the Orientals more, since like they're not really Spanish, any of them, or Portuguese or French, or whoever had a thing over there for a sphere of influence, or owned Vietnam or Laos. They're all Asian, so do we, to them. And you'd think we would get along in this and somehow and use this for our own advantage, for something to be like, Europe's still trying to hold colonial power over everybody simply because of their ability to manipulate the banking structure at this level and force inflation. And it's like, you want to be the global reserve and currency, you're going to have to do this and figure out how to get some of the money out and show that these people were illegal, because, we don't have any of the proof, because all the bad stuff was either done in, yours or your friend like Mexico or Canada's wilderness backyard, and you didn't have any of your ents or were trees go out there and were listening at stuff in the middle of a hiking area. And then it forces more stuff on a cascading situation of, is the government really against us, everything else. And if anything goes about it, since we've had like we said, we had an operative in the USA that put things in there that you can't prove about. Yeah, it might be connected back to the Vatican Bank, but we're sure we can, since there's 5 points of separation here, or 6, that's too far for you to think, because you must be a Mason. And it's tribal, and you hate tribals. Anyway, we'll just flood your area with these and help with the inflation problem and upset the balance of everything and take all the money for it. And you, meanwhile, will say, you had connections with this person or that person on your PayPal account. You sent money to this person or that person that you kind of really didn't know, or something else, or, had an internet girlfriend for dating that was a scam group. We can't give you that money because it'll go out of the USA too much. And, we can keep printing it just to placate you and other stuff. Well, in looking at that, I'm just kind of going, isn't that still just more of an extortion scheme? Rigging systems that are outside of the banking system for cash that had a loose network of people in there. I'm not trying to say witch hunt, because these aren't witches, they're just standard criminals, and it is legislated in there, and it's like, it's not legislated perfectly enough to stop this. So that there needed to be legislation, so why didn't you ever do it? We don't know how to really judicially look at this. Okay, so as the Supreme Court, looking over the economics, going in and outside of the borders and coming across and everything else, and that the legislation is incomplete. You did not send a situation to the White House or to the legislation to say, okay, the legislation is incomplete. This could be a foreign national situation. This could be this. The White House didn't send something over and say, I do believe it's this. This person has been doing this in here and has a green card. We need to try him for citizenship, and to see if, or investigate him for citizenship, and to see if possibly that this is a domestic crime because of this, and this, by how I see it. Or else go over to the Senate and go, Senate committee and chairperson, I, as guarding the nation from foreign nationals, need you to make these laws here to make sure that they don't have any citizens that corrupt them, and are not part of their network or anything else, and inform the citizenry properly over the new legislation that I need you to make for me to guard the country against foreign national economic warriors. They don't really seem to have a government and can instantly separate themselves from the government through personal disavowalment and call themselves terrorists. So these economic terrorists, they could possibly personally separate themselves from their government and be like, anything for this group, there. And it still doesn't include going to war with France. It still doesn't include all this other stuff. Us saying, okay, we will not charge you with anything, with you going against whatever it is of World War II and rejoining with your Roman principality, instead of sending them and their population back to Rome to be dealt with. And they can't really have any execution on them per the Vatican's own situation, unless they go into the enclave of the papacy, and the Swiss Guard will then administer a death penalty unto them as a principality based off of whatever the things are. They have all of Italy and Rome to roam over. But no, you're okay, and due to freedom of religion, you can come here and do things up and down the Mississippi, from Ferguson on down to Louisiana, and make chaos and everything else, and do whatever it was with New Caledonia. This is just the way that I'm kind of seeing how it's kind of going out. And if the Civil War was really just a giant war game, as some of the Mussolini family has told me directly to my face, as close as that I learned it in the Bible thing behind me. Or, to, let's just say, the other side of the room completely. You can put another 4 feet on it if you want to feel better. Okay, you understand this? I'm not making this stuff up. The stuff they've gone on about, and people are very, very organized. And most people do not have a brain that's going to last 35 to 25 years on memory, so that they can say, you can't investigate me. People aren't skilled enough just to get with their own family and be like, I won't be seeing you for 35 years, and our family's going to come back together. We're going to have a giant mixer and let the kids all get together and marry their cousins. We'll be 2 separate families by then. No one's going to say anything. It's not like I haven't been around people from Delaware. After all, you can live in any state and still just be not considered a Southerner. Anyway, I know I've rambled on long enough here with this, and I'm a little bit energetic today, so got to go to the work and pay the bills. One of the best things about being a prepper, while you're aware of all this, and I would send this in a little bit more cleaned up, is to work with the government, since they're not like, we don't talk to you if you're across this line. We don't take mail from you across this line. And anybody saying that they have the right to intercept your email and deal with it here or anything else, which is another video I'm coming up with, which is what I think will lead to more of a civil war than this economics even and everything else. Because when you don't have any money, the one thing you know that is priceless is friends and family. And I'll leave that right there with you on that. Friends and family are priceless. And even if you're poor as anything, and it's like I met a guy one time, yeah, he's gay, he's queer as whatever it is, World War II, everything else, evil, family has tons of money, owns land around here, and I would discuss anything over Operation Paperclip because it was really an inside job and doesn't exist on the government books. Really, it's just something that they want to try and weasel and put in there. But, I met this guy, And it's like, I'm not really friends with him because I know that this guy's basically like a scorpion and he'll sting me at any time he wants to. But at the same time, he's cut off from his family, cut off from his money. His family didn't like him. They found out that he was gay, all this other stuff. And it's like, I don't care. I was the only one with a job between four guys that we were all basically going around giving each other better recommendations for anything and saying, yeah, he's a good guy. He's able to do that type of work. He's smart. He actually can count money, do change, which a lot of people can't do. And, I paid for everybody to get into a thing. They did it for me 2 or 3 times and went around in a whole circle with us. People and conversation and being able to do that is going to outweigh a lot of the money issues. But once they draw that line and say, you can't, you're this, you're that, and everything else, kind of like, I'm in the South. My last video, I did mention genociding of black people by World War II, black entities from Africa, and replacement of them. And I heard instantly back from an in-law, let's put it that way, up in New York, and it's like, well, he's from the South, and he's just never going to stop, going after the black people and being so mean to the black people when we need to get rid of the Asians. I didn't mention genocide at all. It's kind of a little crazy. And this guy, at least whoever was around him, pushed my phone, pushed it on silent, and pushed it to where of whatever it was so that I could hear what was happening, and it didn't show as a phone record on me. I never knew that that's what they were really doing with a lot of it. Some of it's at such a high frequency that, it's like a mosquito ring, so it like gets to me a little bit with some of the shell shock stuff that I've had done to me. But I just got to say, just getting a little bit weird. It's like he's talking about genociding Asians, and I'm saying we need to protect the black people of the USA. I don't understand it. Oh yeah, it's just the South because there's a line drawn. Some people need to realize that if this was the Civil War, the 1850s, 1860s, and stuff was all a war game. They came back in. They have the industrial North now, and the agricultural North, and where they make most of the food at. They have California and the West Coast, which makes most of the food, and has a little bit of like telecommunications industrialness. You can't live in a place and win if all you have is pomp and circumstance and everything else. They constantly upgrade their tapestries, get the government to pay off for it, and say, worship and follow these deities that are foreign to the USA. And then they say, make the NIV Bible legitimate law. Or maybe they'll hurt us more economically because it's easier to get people to be a prostitute like the tribe Dina that is made up because that's what you call prostitutes in Latin. It's not really made up, but it's not her name. It's her name in Latin. And you can use it as a witch hunter's Bible now to hunt down any Jewish people that aren't being sluts and whores. And if you're in a church, you have to be a better slut and whore than Dina was. Because that's the tribe they associate with the USA, and that's where they're going to with it. Even though all supposedly Bibles are only for the secondary tribal of the start of the Reich. Just like Portugal was the start of the second one. So it's like even the King James Bible is really a Portuguese Bible. But, I've trailed off a little bit from there into dogma and stuff. And while everyone's going to be like, we're the North and the Union, no, you're the North and the National Army. The Union Army was executed by Gatling gun. They even had General Meade go through it because he couldn't tell a lie and told where everyone was at. And eventually it led to his death out west. And everything went around there just like that. And they even kind of show it when Lincoln rode through the battlefield in that movie Lincoln. I forget the British actor's name who played him. And it showed his son's army group because there was only the National Army left. And it even came up that he had said 2 or 3 things that he would have been put into the Union Army groups. And Lincoln personally vouched for him, said a few things about it, and even got him to go in and say that he was under his rights of assembly of undercover, which does mean you can associate with anyone out there. Irregardless of their past, their criminal implantation into the system for survival, or their exit strategy. It's best to be abridged of the law, even though the law will probably exclude you one day, socially or economically or anything, and use it. They say the one difference between the mafia and the law is it's just one's legal. You can hate me for this one, but sometimes you have to face some cold, hard truths in reality. There's always those people who will not serve you, serve your kind, or however it is, and that's just normal in a lot of ways. You may not have the ability to do anything else, and you have to accept the health care you're going to get to whatever you're going to get from any services or food areas out there. Sometimes when they serve you, they're just going to poison you with aluminum sulfate or lead. It's Colin Dawson, Twilight Prepper, signing off.